Hi everyone, I'm Nadia, and in today's video my mom is making a beautiful resin table with sea glass. All of the glass that she's using is glass that she found at a nearby beach. So this is a win-win. She's doing a beach cleanup and also gets some really cool sea glass pieces for her table. Before she uses them in her resin, she makes sure to rinse them off from the salt water. She'll be making this tabletop out of a mold, and now she gets her resin ready. In this video, she's using craft resin, which is a 1-to-1 ratio by volume. We're going to need a generous amount of resin for this table because the tabletop needs to be thick in order to be sturdy, and it also needs to entirely cover all of the sea glass. She takes 2 large Greek yogurt containers, which she's repurposing as mixing cups, and she fills one entirely with the part A. And she fills the second one with the part B. Then she pours both parts into this large container to mix together. You'll need to mix your resin thoroughly for 3 to 5 minutes. However, when you're dealing with larger quantities of resin like this, it's better to mix for around 5 minutes to make sure that you've mixed every area properly. Once that's mixed in well, she pours it back into smaller cups, which will be easier to pour into the mold later. She decided to mix in a little bit more resin. So again, she added in equal parts of the A and B and mixed those two together well. Then she pours her clear resin into the mold, which she did secretly off camera, but once that resin is in the mold, she takes a torch gun and pops any air bubbles. She's moving the torch gun very quick to be careful not to burn the resin or the mold. If you notice any fibers or dust particles in your resin, you can easily pick them out using a thin wooden stick. She'll be using an alcohol ink set from the brand HXDZFX. She's selecting the colors that she wants to use on this table, and she's setting them aside, and she's aiming to use similar colors as the sea glass. The sea glass that she's collected is a mix of clear greens, blues, and browns. She takes her alcohol inks and drops it directly onto the resin. She starts off with this beautiful greenish blue shade. Next, she's using an orange alcohol ink. Next, she's using a deep blue alcohol ink, and this one is from Depon. She continues to drop in the different shades, and you can have a lot of fun with this part. And she adds in some brown alcohol ink to mix with that orange. As always, I have all of the products that we use in our videos in my description, so if you're interested in following this tutorial, be sure to check that out. A friendly reminder that alcohol ink is flammable, so when you're using large amounts of alcohol inks in your resin like this, you want to avoid using a torch gun. Now she takes her clear resin and pours it in the center of the mold and around the mold to create some movement within the alcohol inks. She has a basket ready full of her sea glass, and now she's just adding in handfuls at a time. She's using this thick silicone mixing stick to pat down the sea glass and make sure that it's flat, and also to help spread it out evenly. She adds in more alcohol ink near the center, and again pours clear resin over that area. She's paying a lot of attention to ensure that no pieces of sea glass are bulging out of the resin. She's using a wooden stick to help fit in some small pieces of sea glass in little empty areas. Now that the alcohol ink is diluted with the resin and it's not laying on top of that layer of resin, she carefully goes in with a torch gun and pops air bubbles. You still want to be mindful to move your torch gun very quickly and not use it on too high of a setting. Now that she's done with this layer, she comes back once it's hardened to demold. And to demold, she brought it to the same beach where she collected all of the sea glass. Before she adds on a top coat, she's going to do some sanding, and this is great to do to ensure for a stronger bond between those two resin layers. This is especially important if more than a few days have gone by before you're able to do your top coat. Sanding will also get rid of any blemishes and any possible bits that are sticking out of your resin. She's using a sanding tool, and this makes the process really easy. And always be sure to wear a respirator mask while you're sanding so that you don't breathe in any of those small particles. To create less of those particles in the air, you can pour water onto your piece and sand it down with the water. You want to make sure not to miss any areas and not to go over one area more than another to make sure that you have a nice and leveled piece. And she's also sanding down the edges. Then rinses off that residue with some more water. Here's a little time lapse of the water drying, and if your piece looks like this, then you know that you've sanded it good. Now she'll be adding on some liquid latex onto the back side of her tabletop to be able to do a top coat of resin out of the molds. This liquid latex will catch any resin drops that drip over the edge, and these drops will easily come off with the latex the next day. She applies it close to the edge and then uses a silicone mixing stick to help push it to the very edge. Once the liquid latex is just dried enough, she flips her tabletop over and props it up onto cups. Now she's able to mix in her resin once more, and again she's using craft resin. So she mixes in equal parts of the A and B. And then mixes those two together well. She mixes for around 3 to 5 minutes. Craft resin is a great option to use for a resin table because it always achieves crystal clear results and also has a nice and hard finish. Once that's mixed well, she pours it into another cup to mix again. This is a great thing to do, especially when you're doing a top coat, and this ensures that you haven't missed any areas while you're mixing, like areas where it can be hard to reach and hard to mix, such as the bottom of your cup and the side of your cup. So by doing this, you're not risking having any areas in your resin that haven't been mixed properly and could cause issues in your top coat. She places her cup of resin in Resiner's bubble removal machine, and this works like a vacuum and suctions up all of the air bubbles to the top of the cup where they pop on their own. This takes a few minutes, and in the meantime she's cleaning out her cups. Sometimes there'll just be a few air bubbles left sitting at the top of the cup, but you can easily get rid of these by quickly going over the area with a torch gun. Now she's ready to pour on her top coat. In this top coat, we really want to focus on there being no imperfections, and this can include dust particles, fibers, and especially air bubbles, so just to be safe, she's going over the resin very quickly with a torch gun. Then she uses a silicone mixing stick to help push the resin and make sure that it's covered the whole area and have it reach the very edge. She takes some resin with her hands and she's using nitrile gloves for protection, and she goes over the edges. You'll always want to cover your resin piece with something while it's hardening to minimize the chances of those dust particles or fibers flying into your resin. And today she decided to go with a boogie board. At least it fits the beach theme. She also covers it with this large plastic sheet so that nothing can fly in, not only from the top but through the sides as well. Once this layer of resin has hardened, she can remove the liquid latex. And she has her assistant Remy here who's making sure that the removal is going smoothly. Now we're left with a beautiful shiny finish. She placed the tabletop on top of the legs, and here's the final product. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to see more videos like this in the future. Follow me on my Instagram, Summer Girl Designs, and my mom's Instagram, Wild Heart Resin Art.